I'm Darren Morton.
I'm Simon Matthews. This is Lift,
The Lifestyle Medicine podcast where we dive into the science of health and well-being.
Good morning to you, Professor Morton. Nice to see you again.
Well, it is afternoon, my part of the world, but good morning to you.
Well, let me rephrase and show that I'm aligned with you. Good afternoon, Professor Morton. Nice to see you. Nice to see you again.
Lovely to see you.
So, tell me, straight off the top of your head, don't overthink this. What's something you're grateful for?
What's something I'm grateful for? I am grateful for the work that I get to do. I feel like it's meaningful, and so yeah, I'm very, very grateful for that.
Nice.
What about
you? Wonderful. Actually, I'm going to say exactly the same thing. I feel like I get to do work that I really, really love doing, and I feel like it makes a difference to a number of people. I feel like it contributes to something bigger in the world, and for me, I get to do it in context that I really enjoy, which is not dissimilar to your context as well. So I get to do my work in many different parts of the world, and I'm really grateful.
Grateful for that.
Yeah. Which is a wonderful way to kick off our conversation today.
We're going to be talking about gratitude, and I've got this little story to share, just in case our listeners hadn't figured that out as yet. So this goes back, I think this would probably be 15, maybe even 20 years ago now, but I wrote an article on the person who was the oldest university student at my university at Avondale. And his name was Charles, and at the time he was 93. So we didn't have too many contenders. He actually was quite a long way ahead of the pack in terms of the title of the oldest student. But he was a really loved student of all of the others. They all looked at him, and there were times where they'd shout him lunch. And anyway, he was always hanging around the cafeteria. And I said, Charles, can I interview you? I want to talk with you and learn some of your secrets, because he was a sprightly character. And anyway, so I shouted him lunch, and I sat across, and I was very impressed with his appetite. He did very well putting away a lot of food for a 93-year-old, and he was very, very lean as well. Anyway, he told me his story, and I said, so tell me, Charles, 93, what's the secret? What should I be intentional about now? And anyway, he had a number of different secrets. One, he was super active. So when he was 93, he said, most days I walk about 15 kilometres, which is about 10 miles.
Wow.
And I remember I'd see him walk in from our town into the local town that had a bigger shopping centre, and you'd see him carrying his groceries back home. And a couple of times I even pulled over and said, hey, Charles, I'll give you a lift. And he's like, no, I'm good. So he was very, very active.
Very committed to walking.
Very committed to walking. At the age of 88, he went backpacking around Australia. Backpacking. So he was an incredible character. Anyway, he said, so yeah, you got to keep moving. He said, number 2, he says, keep this one a little secret. He says, eat what chickens eat. And I'm like, what? What does that mean? He goes, yep. He says, I learned, he said, I watch chickens when they're out, and he says, if they eat, they like weeds, they pick on certain little weeds. And he says, so I get into them as well. I think there's something in it. He said, I can't prove it, but I think there's something in it. So I'm going, okay, all right. And then he finishes and he says, however, here's the biggest tip that I can give you. And I said, yeah, what is it? I'm ready. He said, have an attitude of gratitude. And I thought, you know what, this is interesting. This whole idea of attitude and of how we approach life, really. And I could see in him, he was the kind. I remember him saying to me, I said, what are you studying at the moment, Charles? And he said, I'm studying history. I'm doing a history degree. And I'm thinking, he probably wrote a fair bit of this, like at the age of 93.
Featured in it.
He featured, but he said, oh, and I'm loving it. And then he turned to me and literally had these bright, sparkly eyes. He says, I'm very much looking forward to the next decade. That was his comment at the age of 93. So a lot of optimism there, but that attitude of gratitude. Is it a good thing? What do you reckon, Simon?
Yeah.
Do you have an attitude of gratitude?
Yeah, it's certainly, at least from my subjective experience, it's a lovely experience to have,
Mm,
to kind of move through life and feel like you're thankful, feel like you're grateful for what's there. I've been, it's the middle of summer here in Madrid. We've been having days of 41, 42 degrees. So it's cooled off just a little bit this week. Um, but I've been going walking early in the morning, around 6:30, 7 a.m. So that's before sunrise here at the moment. And I've just been walking around the city. There's a park about 5 minutes away from here, so I walk through the park. I do a lap around there. Then I walk past the palace in Madrid. I walk down to this district called La Latina. Walk up past another big, very famous park in Madrid called Retiro, and then I walk through some neighbourhoods here. And as I'm walking those tracks in the morning, I look around and I have this. I can't even describe it really. It's just it's this kind of flooding sense of, oh my goodness, I live here. How fantastic is this?
mm,
I'm just so grateful to be able to experience this each day. Look
mm.
around, see these things, watch the sky starting to get blue in the morning, um, feel that cool morning air, before the day gets hot.
Mm,
Call in somewhere and have a cafe solo, which is the equivalent of an espresso. Yeah. So that subjective experience is
mm,
just delightful. It's absolutely delightful. And
mm.
so to be able to, I think to be able to encourage people and maybe even teach is the right word here. Maybe even teach people to be able to connect with that experience. I
Mm.
think can be quite profound.
Profound. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Some of these pathways, some of the strategies for experiencing more and more gratitude. But we certainly know that there are benefits attached to it from health benefits included.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from a mental health perspective, what would you see, as a psychologist, that some of the benefits of regularly practicing gratitude?
I think one of the really clear benefits is an overall increase in mood.
Mm,
So generally a lighter, brighter mood as a result of the practice of gratitude.
mm,
I think that there's probably I've given up really on trying to explain mechanisms of change because I think
mm,
mechanisms are so complex and so multi-layered.
yeah.
It's really quite impossible for us to do that.
Mm,
But I think there probably are multiple mechanisms here, including biological and endocrine mechanisms, as well as neural pathway mechanisms, um, as well as cognitive behavioral mechanisms. In other words, when we start thinking differently about something, it just subtly shapes our
yes.
behaviour, subtly alters our
Yes.
behaviour, and that,
Mm,
that altered behaviour in turn leads to us having a different perception or experience of an event, which
yes.
in turn shapes our attitudes and beliefs about something and so on. So there's definitely
Yes.
some sort of cyclical process there that could explain this. But I think
Mm.
boosted mood, more optimistic outlook, those opportunities for subtle shifts in behaviour and therefore changes in perception and experience of
And
events.
experience.
They're all things that can flow from gratitude.
I'm glad you picked up on that because often when we talk about the benefits, people start to reflect on, oh, okay, do you sleep better? And actually, there are some studies that indicated that
That's
practicing
probably that
gratitude,
too. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
that obviously linked it to if you're less stressed about a particular thing, and certainly
Exactly.
practice of
Yeah.
gratitude could help to dial down that stress response, and then you might sleep better, there might be better health outcomes. But I'm really interested that you talk about this idea of it leading to changes in our perceptions and our experiences. And I actually think there's really something quite profound in that. You see, what I believe is that gratitude, it actually shifts our focus from what we don't have, from what we do have. And in a sense, that moves us from a deficit mindset to an abundance mindset. And I think that when you approach life with that sort of view, with that lens on, then all of a sudden your ability to experience things. I mean, a lot of people talk about this law of attraction, and I think that there's a truth to that. When you approach life, wide and open, then you're more receptive, clearly, to the opportunities that might be coming available to you. You're more likely to. I mean, it relates to the broaden and build theory of in positive psychology and positive emotion, where we know that when people are experiencing more positive states like gratitude, they actually can even access parts of their brain. They're more synchronous. We're more creative. We're more likely to reach out to other people and accept help or give help. And so really it broadens our repertoire of skills and life experience. So there's a lot of up to it. There's a lot of positives. My question to you is, can you be too grateful?
Well, this is a really interesting question, and in short, yes, you can. Yes, you can be too grateful. And one of the people who's done quite a bit of research here is Sonia Lyubomirsky, who's from University of California. University of California. I want to say. I forget. Look, I can't remember which campus, but Irvine, is it? Okay,
I think
UC
it might
Irvine.
be, yeah.
Dr. Lyubomirsky has done a great deal of research on gratitude and the sequelae of gratitude, what it leads to, increased happiness and so on. She's published academic papers and published books on it as well. However, she's also very clear that we can have too much of it. And in one particular study, participants were asked to note 5 things for which they were thankful. And they were randomly assigned to groups to do this either once per week or 3 times per week, and there was a control group as well. But the experimental arms were the once per week and the 3 times per week of counting blessings. And the people who did it once per week showed significant improvements in their well-being over the course of the study. The people who did it 3 times per week showed either no increase or even, get this, a slight decrease in their well-being over the duration of the study. So what's going on that could explain that? Well, there's a couple of things, I think. One is that maybe it just gets boring. It gets boring and tedious to kind of have to sit there and go, okay, well, what am I grateful for today? I think another.
I think
go ahead.
there's a truth to that, because it's like, when you say to someone, what's 4 times 2? And they go, 8. What's 4 times 2? And you just keep saying, in the end, there's no thought process that go with it. It's
it's just automatic.
Down.
Exactly right. So you're not actually connecting with any sort of real experience there. It really just becomes a cognitive exercise. This is a task I have to complete because I've been directed to do it. But the other part of it that I think is more interesting here, and for me at least makes sense as an explanation of this.
LIFT is supported by the LIFT Project, an educational adventure where you learn science-based ways to lift your mood and your life. The LIFT Project is lifting lives around the globe, in healthcare settings, workplaces, schools, universities and communities. To find out more, visit theliftproject.global.
Is the idea that in focusing, if you like, excessively on gratitude, we're starting to be maybe a little less real about who we are as people. Yes, it's wonderful to be grateful for things that you have. And at the same time, it's important to recognise that our lives, the lives of family members, friends, people around us, are periodically characterized by difficulty, by challenge, by distress, by sadness, by grief, significant changes to what life looks like, and there are there's a school of thought, of course, that would say, well, even within the midst of all of those challenges, it's still possible to find something that you're grateful for, and I would absolutely agree with that. And I would add to that, it's also important not to make the practice of gratitude outweigh the reality of what else is going on. It's important just to say, this is bad. I mean, this is not nice. I'm not enjoying this. I'm not having a nice time. I am struggling to find something to be grateful for in all of this, and to be real about that. So I think that sometimes if we tilt the scales too much into this desperate pursuit of gratitude, then we stop being real about those things to ourselves. And here's the thing: those things remain real, and those things continue to have an effect on our lives, whether or not we choose to pay attention to them. And if we do choose to pay attention to them, if we do choose to label them as problematic or negative for us, or whatever words you might use there, then we also give ourselves an opportunity to respond to those things and to begin perhaps to make something different. If we're not doing that, if we're only focused on, what are you thankful for? What are you thankful for? We're not giving ourselves the opportunity to respond to those challenges.
Yeah, I think that idea of getting the balance right is really important. Unfortunately, there's probably a lot of people that could, there's a lot of good studies show that actually bolstering the gratitude aspect could be really helpful to them. So how do we do that? What are our top tips for cultivating gratitude, an attitude of gratitude?
Well, so I think an important place to start is the idea of measure. So, for example, if I say to you, Darren, practicing gratitude is going to be really good for you. I want you to go away, and every day for the next month, I want you to make a list of 15 things that you're grateful for in your life. There is so much to be grateful for, and I want you, as far as possible, to make those things different every day. So you're going to go away, and you'll probably find 15 things on the first day. You'll probably find 15 on the second day. The third day, you'll probably find 14 and repeat 1, and then 13 and repeat 2. And then by the 10th day, you're going to be down to about 12 things, and you'll be struggling to find any more. By the end of the month, it will be pretty easy for you to convince yourself that you've got a problem, and gee, I really maybe I don't have as much to be grateful for as I thought I did, because now I'm really struggling to identify things. So in other words, I'm now evoking the opposite effect to what I wanted, simply by the way that I've set up that practice with you. So having a modest practice of gratitude, I think is really nice. So even finding one thing a day, just sharing one thing a day that you're grateful for, I think is a great place to start. I think we also do need to be deliberate about it. Another part of Sonia Lyubomirsky's research, and for that matter, Barbara Fredrickson, is around what gets called the negativity bias in humans. So the idea that our minds tend naturally to kind of hold on to perceived negative experiences a little more strongly than perceived positive experiences. So we do need to deliberately cultivate these experiences of gratitude. But starting with one or two a day, I think is nice. Maybe having a practice of weekly or fortnightly, taking a slightly bigger perspective and seeking to draw all those together into something that has even greater meaning for you, I think can be a great practice as well. And if you're someone who who is not currently engaged in, what we might call here an active practice of gratitude, it doesn't all need to be fixed by tomorrow. You can start slowly. Start with one thing, then one more, and just build up bit by bit.
I like your approach. I think that the daily practice is actually, there's value in that. And certainly from my own experience, I think that taking time and certainly, you're describing listing one or two or possibly even three things that are good about that day or that went well that day. That's a really common gratitude exercise. And in fact, I've been very interested to watch. I mean, what it's often referred to as what went well, or the 3 blessings experiment. It's really quite interesting to see what changes occur in people's sort of mental wellbeing metrics over the course of time. And as researchers, we often do activities or interventions or treatments to people, and you see an effect, and then you see it sort of dwindle over time. There's quite a few studies that actually show that the treatment effect progressively grows when people get in the habit and practice of that. So I like that. I like that small daily touch point. It is intriguing to me that many faith traditions have gratitude built into their daily practice and routines. So, for example, prayer or mindfulness meditations they're often gratitude based. They try and evoke that kind of experience. But what I also like is your idea that having some sort of bigger picture every now and then, so it remains meaningful, but not as often, but just having those moments where you really pull back and do something, perhaps a deeper dive into gratitude. And for me, the preeminent experience in this space is what they call the gratitude visit. And if I was to give one sort of homework task to the listeners, it is it's very simple. Well, it's simple, but it's challenging, and that is identify someone who's living today that has had a positive, significant impact on your life. Write a few paragraphs about that person, and then, and here's the challenge, actually go and read that to them. In studies, I mean, Martin Seligman did the work in this space, and they were finding when you do a very significant, a deeply meaningful gratitude experience like that, for literally, they were seeing up to 30 days later, people were still reporting improvements in their mental health metrics because of that.
I did a variation of that not long before I left Australia. So I had a clinical supervisor many years ago when I was a much younger and more junior psychologist and therapist, and I used to see him regularly for supervision. And then my work changed and I no longer had the need for that. But I often used to find myself over the ensuing years just reflecting on things that he had said to me or things that he had asked me. It was clear to me that he had had quite a strong shaping influence on me as a practitioner. And approaching the time when we came over here to Madrid. One day, completely out of the blue, he was on my mind, and I thought, I want to go and visit Doug before we leave. So I called him up. I said, Doug, you haven't heard my voice for 20 years. And he remembered straight away, or at least he pretended to remember straight away. No, he didn't remember straight away, I'm sure. And so we organised a time to catch up the following week. I went over to his, so he has an office in his house. I went over there, and we spent a couple of hours together that afternoon, just in conversation about some shared memories that we both had, about a whole bunch of things, nothing in particular and everything in general. And it was an absolute boost for him. It was an absolute electric charge for me to have this experience. And not only did it carry me for many, many days or weeks afterwards, as soon as you mentioned that, of course, that was the first thing back in my mind. And now I'm sitting here telling the story again, reliving the experience again. And this is one of the powerful impacts of the practice of gratitude, I think, when we experience things in this way, they become really significant memories for us. And because of that, we have access to them. And when we have access to them, it's very easy to recall them and relive them, and to some extent, re-experience that again.
Yeah, oh, look, I've actually I've performed the gratitude visit myself, did it to my mum, and there are many others that I should do it to, because I think to myself, the benefit that I got, let alone the receiver, the recipient, there's something really, really powerful about being in that space, in that gratitude space and all that goes along with it.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the homework task I'd love to issue to all of you out there. That would certainly radiate a whole lot of joy in the world if we all engaged in something like that.
And it's also useful to think about the lifestyle medicine application of this, I think. And I think this practice does have an application in primary healthcare. I also think that we need to be careful about how to do it. So, if a patient with diabetes and other comorbidities walks in and sits down in the primary care physician's office, saying, "So, what are you grateful for this week?" as the very person you say is probably not hitting the mark. However, having a conversation with that patient, perhaps about their experience, understanding, perhaps even asking the question. So if you think back over this past week, what have you learned managing your condition this last week? And if you then move into, let me ask you something else, which might seem a little bit left field, but if you were to think back over the last week and share with me something that you feel grateful for, what comes to mind? So I think we can support patients to connect with those experiences of gratitude in a compassionate and careful way.
Yes,
and that can then become part of the story for that person. The other thing that happens there, of course, is the expectancy effect. So if primary care physicians and other healthcare clinicians start doing this with patients, what that means is over time, that patient sits in the waiting room and then starts having their own internal discourse along the lines of, "Oh, the doctor's going to ask me something that I'm grateful for.
Yes.
I wonder what that is."
So,
again, we start seeing those subtle shifts in cognition, subtle shifts in behaviour. It's a long game.
It is.
Yeah.
To loop back to the very start, we asked each other what we were grateful for, and we came up with a common theme, and that was that we're grateful for the work we get to do. And part of that for me is being grateful for the people I get to work with. And so I want to say, brother, I really enjoy getting to chat with you on a regular basis in this podcast. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And the feeling is absolutely mutual. The times when we get together to do this are one of the highlights of my week.
Lift is presented by Simon Matthews and Darren Morton. It's sponsored by the Lift Project and supported by Avondale University. Music provided by Pixabay. If you have a question or a topic you would like to hear more about, send us an email to podcast@theliftproject.global. The Lift Project. Lift your mood, lift your life.